This is the Black Mountain Industrial Complex. Timet is one of the major corporations that operates here. There are chemical companies that operate out of here as well. All of these jobs here at this industrial complex are very good paying jobs that support other jobs and businesses in the communities. The businesses and companies themselves support other companies as well. It's a World War II town. Henderson really grew up during World War II. Companies like this, as well as Geneva Steel in Utah, were started in response to demand from the United States government for materials to support the war effort. Timet started out as Basic Magnesium of Henderson. Henderson used to kind of be its own town with its own identity, and it still is, but a lot of the growth and urban sprawl from Las Vegas has spilled over into it, and it's all one big area now. Titanium is one of the miracle metals that has been developed during the past century. Titanium has hundreds of different uses, ranging from drill bits to turbofans on jet engines. External tile panels on the space shuttle. It's an extremely lightweight, strong metal.
Anybody who grew up around Las Vegas, Henderson during the 70s, 80s, remembers the infamous Henderson Cloud.
You could pretty much see it anywhere in the valley from Mount Charleston to North Las Vegas to Apex.
Over the years, state, local, federal agencies have taken measures to improve the air quality around here by requiring these companies to comply with the Clean Air Act of 1971.
I happen to know this based on first-hand inside information because my stepfather served on the Clark County Air Quality Pollution Control Board for a number of years. It was a division of the Clark County Health Department. I remember some of the things my mom used to share with me that he would tell her. The plants were actually being fined thousands of dollars every week, and it was actually cheaper for them to pay those fines than it was to upgrade their emission control equipment. I remember it was a Friday, we were headed out to the lake to go to the houseboat for the weekend, and we stopped up there at Appaloosa and Wagon Wheel Drive up there in Henderson, and my stepdad was taking pictures of the mailboxes. I asked my mom what he was doing. He was compiling evidence to use in some of these hearings against some of these companies. The toxins that were being released into the air would react with some of the metals in these mailboxes. It was very corrosive. There came a point where the various state, federal, and local regulatory agencies mandated that they have to upgrade their equipment by not renewing their operating permits, making them ineligible for subsidies, grants, and low-interest loans. That was back in the days when we actually had sane politicians that actually tried to help private businesses to be able to afford to operate in this country, because they don't want to see those jobs go to Mexico. They don't want to see those jobs go to China. At one time, these companies used to release far more amount of pollutants into the air than they do now, and now technology has enabled them to operate very safely and with very good emission standards. These companies out here today are releasing far less pollutants into the atmosphere than they did 30 years ago.
I live a couple miles from this industrial park here, and I'm glad that the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection has air quality standards, that they monitor the air, that they monitor groundwater through test wells, because I have kids and I don't want them being exposed to carcinogens and breathing polluted air either. But there's a limit on how much we can regulate industry.
We have the highest emission standards in the world. Our industry, companies that operate here, are some of the most regulated companies in the world. There's a tipping point at which you can regulate businesses. Here's a list of other countries in the world that produce titanium. If our politicians and bureaucrats and federal judges continue to overregulate, make energy more scarce and more expensive, then it will no longer be affordable for businesses and manufacturers to continue to operate in this country.
they move offshore. And then what happens to all these jobs? What happens to our local tax base, our local state, county tax base here?
Those jobs will be gone forever. We'll never get those back. Not in our lifetime. I went to junior high school in Saudi Arabia. I've traveled all over the world, and poverty and tyranny are the norm. That's a natural state of things. The United States is different. We are the exception. Because exceptionalism takes hard work and it takes freedom. We can no longer continue to maintain our standard of living and our way of life by being a consumption-based economy. Any first-year economics student will tell you that. It's not sustainable to continue to import all of our very basic needs from other countries and export our wealth in the process. We have to be able to develop our natural resources in order to be competitive and economically viable in this coming century. The politicians we have in office right now have no clue on how to create economic growth and prosperity. Most of them have worked in government and the universities all of their lives. A lot of them have never actually had to go out and have a real job and earn a living. They tell us every election cycle that they want to end tax breaks for big corporations that ship jobs overseas. The Democrats have controlled Congress for 4 years. They've controlled Congress and the White House for 2 years, with supermajorities in both houses of Congress. Yet not one piece of legislation has been introduced by Nancy Pelosi to repeal NAFTA or GATT. North American Free Trade Agreement and General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs was lobbied by a Democrat president and passed by a Democrat Congress in 1994. Dick Gephardt was one of the old-time Democrats. He was a majority whip at the time, and he very outspokenly opposed his own president. Dick Gephardt was one of the true old-time Democrats. He was really for the little guy, the working man. Him and others, Ross Perot and Pat Buchanan, all warned of the consequences of this. When Bethlehem Steel closed their facility in Buffalo, New York in the late 80s, the community was shocked. No one ever saw it coming. 20,000 people out of work overnight. Loved ones lost and treasure spent to defeat enemies who could have never done this much damage to our manufacturing capability in this country and our economy. Here's a pillbox overlooking Hoover Dam. It was built during World War II to hide anti-aircraft guns to protect Hoover Dam against potential Japanese attacks. If politicians continue to make energy more scarce, more expensive, and overregulate business to the point where it's not profitable for them to operate in this country, then what will happen to companies like this? Or this one? Or this one? What will happen to employers in our community like this? Or this one? 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 Will our unemployment rate go even higher than it is now? Will we become like Europe, or even worse, one of the third world countries? If you're undecided about how to vote this election, you may want to ask yourself some very fundamental, crucial questions. Are you financially better off than you were 4 years ago? Is your house worth as much as it was 4 years ago? Is your house worth as much as you paid for it? Is your 401k worth as much as it was 4 years ago? Are you earning as much money as you were 4 years ago? Are you as secure in your job as you were 4 years ago? Why would you continue to elect people who are spending us into poverty? A recession is when your neighbor loses their job. A depression is when you lose your job. Economic recovery begins on November 2nd when incumbent politicians lose their jobs.